Welcome to SATV News. This is Riaz Mahmood with our headlines. Central cell to be formed to curb AI misuse during upcoming parliamentary polls, says CEC AMM Nasir. Interim government will decide whether Awami League will remain active or banned, says Rizvi. Amanullah Aman blames fascist Hasina for Dhaka airport fire. Government to raise MPO teachers' house rent allowance to 15%. Protest called off following allowance hike. And now in details. Chief Election Commissioner AMM Nasiruddin today said the Election Commission has a plan to establish a central cell to combat artificial intelligence generated misinformation and disinformation during the upcoming national elections. He said a centrally coordinated cell would be formed to ensure accurate information reaches remote areas, guided by a structured operational framework designed to address the challenges effectively. The CEC made these remarks as the chief guest at a workshop held at the Election Training Institute in the capital's Agagaon. Mentioning that the misuse of AI has now become a global concern, the CEC said the Election Commission wants to take coordinated measures to prevent its misuse in the election process. The Commission has been working on this for a long time and have planned to form a central cell to address misinformation and disinformation. Highlighting the need for a round-the-clock system to counter false information, he further said this is a 24-hour task. The recommendations should clearly indicate how many personnel will be required, how the fact-checking mechanism will operate, how the work of various agencies will be coordinated, who will do what, and how correct information can reach the source of misinformation quickly. BNP Senior Joint Secretary General Ruhul Kabir Rizvi Ahmed said that the interim government will decide whether Awami League will remain active or banned. However, the criminals must be brought to justice, he stressed. He made these comments while talking to their reporters in Noyapolton today. Mr. Rizvi also said asking for a referendum in November is like asking for a favor from one's uncle. If a referendum is held on the day of the national election, then additional costs and time will be saved. Besides, he said it is wrong to think that winning in the student parliament elections in educational institutions will mean winning the national election. In addition, this senior BNP leader instructed the leaders and activists to remain calm in the face of any provocation. Meanwhile, BNP chairperson's advisory council member Amanullah Aman today alleged that Sheikh Hasina was the mastermind behind the recent fire incident at the cargo village of Hazrat Shah Jalal International Airport, calling it an act of sabotage. Fascist Sheikh Hasina is conspiring from a neighboring country to destabilize Bangladesh and foil the upcoming election. She is carrying out these conspiracies through her associates inside the country, he said. Speaking during a memorial meeting, the BNP leader also urged the government and people to stay alert to prevent any further subversive acts by the fascist forces. The BNP leader called up the interim government to take immediate action against Sheikh Hasina and her cohorts and bring them to justice. Aman, also a former VP of Daksu, further alleged that a vested quarter is plotting to disrupt the upcoming election in the name of introducing a PR voting system. In the face of continuous protests, the interim government has decided to increase the house rent allowance for teachers and staff of MPO-listed private educational institutions to 15% of their basic salary. The allowance, however, will be disbursed in 2 phases. The decision was made during a meeting today between protesting teacher leaders and education advisor Professor C.R. Abrar. Following the meeting, the Ministry of Finance approved the 15% house rent allowance in a letter signed by Sharifun Nisa, Deputy Secretary of the Regulation Wing under the Finance Division of the Ministry. The letter also declared the previous approval letter issued on October 16 null and void, according to an official of the Education Ministry and two teacher leaders.
সারা দেশে লাখো মানুষের কঠোর কর্মতৎপরতা
basic salary as house rent allowance in the current fiscal year, while the remaining 7.5% will be implemented in the next fiscal year. The Appellate Division of the Supreme Court began hearing
এখন 16 কোটি মানুষের হাতে
earlier judgment that had abolished the poll-time non-party caretaker government system. The Appellate Division full bench headed by Chief Justice Syed Rifat Ahmed started the proceedings. Advocate Sharif Bhuya was the first to present arguments representing 5 noted citizens in the case. Senior advocates Jainul Abidin and Barrister Ruhul Quddus Kajol appeared for a plea filed by BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir. At the same time, Advocate Muhammad Shishir Monir argued for Bangladesh Jamaat-e-Islami. Attorney General Muhammad Asaduzzaman represented the state. Advocate ASM Shahriar Kabir also took part in the hearing on another plea filed in this connection. On August 27, 2025, the Appellate Division granted leave to hear the appeal against its 2011 judgment that had declared the 30th Amendment to the Constitution, introducing the caretaker government system illegal and fixed today for hearing. The Apex Court passed the order after hearing several review petitions seeking restoration of the 30th Amendment and reinstatement of the caretaker government provision. A coalition of international human rights organizations sent a joint letter to Chief Advisor Dr. Muhammad Yunus on Sunday, pressing for robust institutions to ensure free and fair elections and prevent democratic backsliding. The letter was signed by Civicus, the Committee to Protect Journalists, Fortify Rights, Human Rights Watch, Robert F. Kennedy, Human Rights, and the Tech Global Institute. Following Yunus's meeting with international civil society representatives at an UN General Assembly in New York last month, the groups called on Bangladesh to hold arbitrary arrests and detentions, urging a review and withdrawal of politically motivated cases or those violating freedom of expression and other fundamental rights. Bangladesh has witnessed a staggering 1,16,726 deaths and 1,65,021 injuries in 67,890 road accidents over the past 12 years, revealed to the Bangladesh Jatri Kullan Shomiti. The organization blamed widespread corruption, policy failures and chronic mismanagement in the transport sector for what it described as mass killings on the country's roads. Speaking during a press conference marking National Road Safety Day 2025 at the Dhaka Reporters Unity today, BJKS Secretary General Muzammil Haq Chaudhry said the country's road safety situation has turned into an alarming humanitarian crisis. Citing data compiled from media reports between 2014 and September 2025, Chaudhry said the number of casualties on Bangladesh's roads in the last 12 years exceeds the total deaths in wars such as the ongoing Gaza conflict and the Russia-Ukraine war. Viewers, we're taking a short break. Stay with us.
দীর্ঘ ৩০ বছর ধরে বিশ্বস্ততা ও দ্রুততার সাথে সেবা দেওয়ায় গ্রাহক সেবায় এখন শীর্ষে। বাংলাদেশে গ্রাহক সেবার সাফল্যের পর এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন বিশ্ব বাণিজ্য কেন্দ্র সিঙ্গাপুরে। আপনার যে কোনো পণ্য সিঙ্গাপুর থেকে বাংলাদেশে বুকিংয়ের জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন SA Poribohon Private Limited, Logistics, Parcel and Courier Service, 22 Roberts Lane, Singapore 218302. Phone 0065 629 24900. বাংলাদেশ থেকে সিঙ্গাপুরে পণ্য বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন ঢাকা সহ দেশের যে কোনো ৮০টি শাখা কেন্দ্রে। এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, আপনার সেবা সব সময়।
Welcome, Grand Palace Hotel, Dhaka. A majestic lobby blending timeless elegance with modern design. Experience 5-star comfort in suites and rooms. Sophisticated fine dining restaurant.
Welcome back. You are watching SATV News. Now, news from abroad. Qatar condemns Israel's violations and practices in the Palestinian territories and its continuous violation of the Gaza ceasefire, said Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani on Tuesday during the opening session of the Shura Council. Israel and Hamas have both recommitted the ceasefire plan brokered by US President Donald Trump since Sunday's flare-up in which a Palestinian attack that killed 2 soldiers prompted an Israeli bombardment, killing at least 28 people in Gaza. US envoys met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday, aiming to corral Israel and Hamas to get the Gaza ceasefire plan back on track after an explosion of violence over the weekend that threatened to derail the week-old truce. The new ceasefire took effect on October 10, halting 2 years of war, but the Israeli government and Hamas have been accusing each other of violations of the ceasefire for days. Sarai Takaishi has been formally nominated as Japan's first female prime minister after securing winning votes in parliament's both lower house and upper house today. An acolyte of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and an admirer of Britain's Margaret Thatcher, Takaishi received 237 votes in the lower house election to choose the next premier, topping the majority of the 465-seat chamber, while in the upper house election she won 125 votes in the runoff against Yoshihiko Noda, leader of the main opposition Constitutional Democratic Party. A victory shatters the glass ceiling in a country where men still hold overwhelming sway and puts Japan, a close US ally, on a forceful shift to the right. The nomination happened one day after her Liberal Democratic Party, which has governed Japan for most of its post-war history, agreed to a coalition deal with the right-wing Japan Innovation Party known as Ishin. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on Monday defended Colombia after US President Donald Trump said he would raise tariffs on the South American nation and stop all payments to it. Trump also called Colombia's leftist President Gustavo Petro an illegal drug leader on Sunday, which Petro's government described as offensive. Trump's drug leader comments marked a new low in relations between Washington and Bogota, which the US president accuses of being complicit in the illicit drug trade.
Colombia sabe que somos uno solo, hermanos siameses, y lo que sea con Flores, prima de Silita Flores. ¡Que viva el pueblo!
Meanwhile, Colombian President Gustavo Petro met with the U.S. Charge d'Affaires in Bogota on Monday as the two countries sought to defuse a diplomatic crisis triggered by U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to impose new tariffs and his accusation that Petro is a drug leader. Petro held talks with John McNamara, the top U.S. diplomat in Colombia, at the American embassy, according to Colombian government footage. Colombia's ambassador to the United States, Daniel Garcia Pena, also attended the meeting. The meeting came after Colombia recalled its ambassador from Washington following Trump's weekend comments, which the Colombian government described as offensive. Trump said he would raise tariffs on Colombia and cut off financial aid, though it was unclear what funding he was referring to. The dispute has intensified following U.S. military strikes on vessels allegedly transporting drugs. Petro condemned a recent bombing that killed 3 people, saying the boat belonged to a humble family and not rebels, as claimed by U.S. officials. Bolivia's President-elect Rodrigo Paz pledged on Monday to restore institutional order, ensure fuel supplies and rebuild international ties as he prepares to take office on November 8 following a decisive runoff win. Speaking at a press conference in La Paz alongside Vice President-elect Edman Lara, Paz said his government would prioritize reconciliation and transparency after nearly 20 years of socialist rule under the MAS party. The 58-year-old centrist also vowed to address fuel shortages and revealed talks with U.S. and regional officials to secure energy supplies and re-establish Bolivia's global standing. His administration will pursue an aggressive policy to open economic and political spaces for Bolivia, he said, citing $60 billion in lost gas revenues and $40 billion in debt under previous administrations. The ceasefire agreement between Islamabad and Kabul is linked to the ruling Taliban's ability to rein in militants attacking Pakistan from Afghanistan, said Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Mohammad Asif during an interview with Reuters on Monday. The South Asian neighbors agreed to a ceasefire in Doha at the weekend after days of border clashes that killed dozens, the worst such violence since the Taliban seized power in Kabul in 2021. Ground fighting between the one-time allies and Pakistani airstrikes across their contested 1,600 miles frontier were triggered after Islamabad demanded that Kabul control militants, saying they operated from havens in Afghanistan. We have a ceasefire agreement as long as there is no violation of the agreement which is already in force. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the umbrella of several Islamist militant groups, operates out of Afghanistan to attack Pakistan in connivance with the Taliban, the minister said.
This was very clearly spelled out that there.
Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Monday rejected an offer of renewed talks from U.S. President Donald Trump and denied his assertion that the United States has destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities. Tehran and Washington engaged in 5 rounds of indirect nuclear negotiations that ended with the 12-day air war in June, in which Israel and the U.S. bombed Iranian nuclear sites. Trump says he is a deal maker, but if a deal is accompanied by coercion and its outcome is predetermined, it is not a deal but rather an imposition and bullying, Khamenei said, according to the state media. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy began a 5-year sentence on Tuesday for conspiring to raise campaign funds from Libya, arriving at La Santé prison in Paris in a stunning downfall for a man who led the country between 2007 and 2012. Sarkozy, who was convicted and sentenced last month, is the first former French leader to be jailed since Nazi collaborator Marshal Philippe Pétain after World War II. Shortly after he headed for La Santé, Sarkozy published a long message on X in which he claimed to be a victim of revenge and hatred. Leaders of European nations, including Britain, France, Germany, Ukraine and the European Union, on Tuesday issued a joint statement setting out support for Ukraine and US President Donald Trump's efforts to end the fighting there. The statement said European leaders would meet later this week at an EU summit and in the format of the coalition of the willing of countries that back Ukraine. Zelensky will attend the coalition of the willing meeting on Friday in London. The coalition put together by France and Britain in February has held talks for months at various levels to try to define plans for what countries could contribute militarily for Ukraine and to deter Russia from attacking it again once there is a final truce. "15 international staff with the United Nations have been confined to the UN compound in Yemen's capital Sana'a since an incursion by the Houthi authorities on Saturday, UN spokesperson Stephane Dujarric said on Monday. He said the staff are now free to move around the compound and have been in contact with their families and UN agencies, adding, "We hope that they will be free to leave the compound as soon as possible." Dujarric said that 5 Yemeni staff who were also detained in the compound since Saturday have been released. In addition, another 53 UN staff remain arbitrarily detained by the Houthis, he said, some since 2021.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your patience.
Is it okay that the UN staff...
Before ending, we go through the headlines again. Central cell to be formed to curb AI misuse during upcoming parliamentary polls, says CEC AMM Nasir. Interim government will decide whether Awami League will remain active or banned, says Rizvi. Amanullah Aman blames fascist Hasina for Dhaka airport fire. Government to raise MPO teachers' house rent allowance to 15%. Protest called off following allowance hike. You are updated with our top stories so far here on SATV, and to know the latest news, visit www.satv.tv. Stay with SATV.